Erev Tov Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and I figured, guys, we would just go ahead and take a little bit more of a simple approach this evening. I know there's a lot of things happening in the world today. Burt Reynolds passed away, the legendary actor who played in Smokey and the Bandit. I guess was probably best known for that. And Alex Jones, of course, has been banned from Twitter and Periscope permanently. And, you know, I was watching the videos that they were showing of him, or actually himself, I get probably himself filming them. And even for me, as far as independent media, I respect freedom of speech and independent media tremendously, but it's just carrying it too far, in my opinion. You know, I think that if you disagree with someone, invite them on, try to get a public debate with them. But some of the actions there, it's more provocative than it is trying to get an answer out of someone. But anyway, not to say that maybe some of the things he says is not true, but the issue is just the way you go about it. But anyway, it is what it is, and sometimes you wonder if there's not a purpose for what's going on, if this is not yet another staged event that is happening for the future of what will happen to freedom of speech and independent media. And of course, the way Alex is carrying about himself, it will only cause more problems for independent media, because if you act like a wild man in the public like that, before different people that you're accusing on Capitol Hill, etc., then what can we anticipate for, you know, the government to think about the rest of independent media if we follow this as the leading example of independent media? So it's really a shame on independent media, because it hurts us down the road. But, you know, actually today what I wanted to discuss was something that was going on, and it was a choice of words that I made in the broadcast yesterday when I called the United States a democracy. And boy, did I ever get beat up in the comments for that statement. Well, you're a left liberal Democrat. I thought democracy meant that, in other words, we had a right to vote. As they say about Israel, Israel is a democracy, or at least this is what Prime Minister Netanyahu always says, is that we're the only democracy in the Middle East. So I didn't realize it was that big of an issue, but then I noticed, though, there are some major debates, especially even in 2018. Sorry, liberals, but America is not a democracy. It's a republic, is what the issue is brought up here. Well, as far as what side of the fence I have always been on my entire life, was a Republican. Now, I hope all the Democrats out there don't hate me because I made that statement. No, I wasn't like Donald Trump, where I was a Democrat for a while, and then a Republican, and then a Democrat, then a Republican. I'm not wishy-washy, I've always been a Republican. Mainly because of the conservative values for the sanctity of life, the Christian values that are normally shared by some Republicans. I don't want to say all Republicans, because it's really not the case. But always go back to the days of my high school. No, I didn't have a master's degree from college, so to me a democracy was those that vote for their own country, their choice in election, which is, and I know everybody's going to say Washington Post is the most liberal newspaper out there. Well, yep, it is, and I don't like the Washington Post either, but they actually quote from the dictionary in here, where it says here, American Heritage Dictionary, a political order in which the supreme power lies in the body of citizens who are entitled to vote for officers representing responsible to them. We are that, a common definition of the word democracy. That's what I thought anyway. But then I got to thinking about it after we've seen all these comments in the comment section there, and I realized that, wow, what are we dealing with? We are actually dealing with, technically, if you think about it, Republicans are for the Republic, the Constitution. Democrats are for democracy, but I suppose they're anti-Constitution. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure where that goes. So that's the part that's troubling for me. All right, let me I got to take you guys down a little bit of a road here, though, so that you guys can understand a little bit more about what's going on in this country. At this point now, I would have to say I don't want to be a Democrat or a Republican, for that matter, because I've never seen such infighting amongst the two different groups. And no doubt there are professing Christians in both camps, both Republicans and Democrats. I can't imagine myself ever seeing Jesus choosing a side of Democrat or Republican to begin with. I just don't see him doing it. He wanted us to have peace between each other, not kill each other over governmental issues. He did say, give that which is Caesar to Caesar and give that to God which is God's. We know this when they were talking about paying the taxes, that type of issue there. But at the same time, in 1983, I began working with the Central Intelligence Agency. I'll be speaking in Nashville, Tennessee about this. In fact, I'm actually preparing the next couple of weeks here, I'm preparing an affidavit that will be filed in federal court that will be speaking about my time, the work that I did, and the cases that I am familiar with that I think could possibly be solved. I haven't spoken about that publicly yet, but I did speak to a good friend who is an attorney. Besides the law enforcement officials I've spoken to already about this, and I was given some advice, the things that I should be doing as I go forward in exposing the things that go on in our government, in the U.S. government. As a result of that, though, I worked from 1983 to 1990, and during my course of time, I knew a lot of politicians. They wouldn't necessarily know me that well. I just happened to be the one that would get to walk in with some of the higher ranked agents that I worked with. So I got to know who they were, both Democrats and Republicans. But what's sad that you guys are not aware of course, we hear about all the alleged cases about the Clintons and the smuggling of drugs, the weapons. We hear about the Iran-Contra affair. Again, drugs for weapons, going back and forth, the Mena Air Base being used, Clinton denying it, of course, etc. All those things there that were happening. I never was involved with the Clintons or any of that aspect there, but the part that I worked with the government mirrored very similar activities as what you read about there. I'll just say it that way there so you understand. There was money laundering, illegal campaign contributions going on by some very powerful entities in the United States. Democrats and Republicans were involved. And there were a lot of wealthy people involved as well. And companies, all sorts of companies under these conglomerates that were involved. And it really came down to a money laundering scheme. And there is some things, I can't go into it at this point now, but very much what you see about the Iran-Contra affair that also was happening with Central America. If you look at what John Stockwell talks about, the arming of the Contras, things like that, I think you could read between the lines. My issue is, I saw people that were silenced to cover these things up. When I say saw, that doesn't mean with physical eyes seeing. So I will clarify that. Maybe the correct terminology is very much aware after the fact of things that have gone on in this nation. You would be surprised at who orders these things. And if you knew the cover-ups, just how elaborate they are and how they went all the way to the White House under a Republican presidency, it would shock you. And that was cover-ups in order to protect Democrats and Republicans because of how many of them are involved. I have learned, even since then, how sinister things are within our own government. You know, we think we have a right of vote, that we vote for either Democrat or Republican. So if you want to call this a republic, or if you want to call this a democracy, call it whatever you will. We're a corporation, is what we really are. That's why on your birth certificate, your name is in all capital letters. You're part of a corporation. The only thing that you're electing is the next president of the corporation. What happens, though, when they decide to dissolve this corporation? You ever wonder why a lot of the world leaders and big shots are moving over to the Far East? I used to hear them talk about, go to South America to be safer there when the United States collapses. Well, I'm finding out that they're not going there, but going to places like Indonesia, China, the Philippines. There's a lot of things going to happen here very soon that's going to shock many of us. And unfortunately, I have found out a lot of things personally. I have a lot of knowledge about things that go on in our government that most of you have never dreamed of. So while you argue over whether or not we are a republic or a democracy, and I believe, yes, we are a republic, a constitutional republic, that's what I would like to believe, but I do realize, too, that we are a corporation. And we're really just a bunch of dumb sheep being led by a wolf. And we are made to believe that we have freedoms in this nation, that we have a say-so, that we have a right. And to some degree, yes. Thus far, we've had freedom of speech, we've had freedom of religion in the United States. But that could vanish overnight. Whenever they're ready to collapse this system, it could vanish right before our eyes. And I know that there are many that are really hoping that President Trump is the savior of this nation. It's sad because the people have lost focus of Christ. As he said himself to the Jews, I came in my Father's name and you received me not, but another will come in his own name and him you will receive. Listen, I had a lot of high hopes for President Trump as well. But I also realized they're all in bed together. As I said, I know this from a personal standpoint. I also know that George Bush Jr. profited greatly from things that happened under his father's administration when he was protecting Democrats that you didn't know about. Rewards were given out handsomely during campaign elections. I have a feeling there's a lot of other money laundering going on as well. It's not just in these big corporations. I have a feeling there's a lot of 501c corporations as well that is laundering drug money on a very massive scale. After all, how do they become so huge and so big to begin with? And the donors there, well, you would just never know who the donor is. And easily it could be an anonymous donor that drops tens of thousands in the coffers of these mega churches, whereas most of the parishioners that go there don't have that kind of money. But maybe some of those big corporations that have far more money than what they need. Friends, let me tell you something. There's a lot more going on in this world than what you realize. And I know from those levels, I know from intelligence communities in other nations, I know from the evangelical community how corrupt those big leaders are. Maybe not all of them, but I know quite a few of them that are very corrupt. I know personally they're taking us to a new world order. They didn't bother to tell us anything, did they? No. You know, they're going to get a free ride in some other country when they leave their sheep behind to die. I guess that's the guarantee they get. Take some of their wealth with them, escape all the calamity that's coming while they sell you out. These are the things that we're saying openly in our meetings around the country. You know, hpccenter.org, or is it .com? Let me just pull it up real quick. If you haven't registered, .com actually, if you have not registered for the meeting there for the 14th and 15th of September, I encourage you to be there. I'm hoping to have the affidavit filed in federal court before then. And by the way, that just tells you I'm not talking about a joke. This is not some bogus story going forth. These are real things. And there's real corruption in our government far beyond what you could ever imagine. And just like we've heard the stories about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, that they're actually cousins, you know, some of the things in the public eye should tell you they're not enemies. But I know these things for a fact. And we can debate all we want about the little things because I said a democracy. Woohoo. Sorry about that. You offend the Republicans if you say democracy. If you say a republic, you offend the Democrats. Listen, my point to you guys is we don't have either one anymore. What about the suspending of the Constitution 100 miles inland around the United States? Anywhere from the coastline, 100 miles in, they suspended the Constitution under Obama's tenure. And as I said to you, I know personally those that work with different presidents as well in the Secret Service. They're looking for an excuse to bring this nation down and disarm this nation, to bring it to a police state, a dictatorship. I've shared those things with you already. And yet we still blindly think everything's going to be hunky-dory here. Nothing's changed. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they don't end up pulling both Trump and his VP, Mike Pence, out of office and stick Obama right back into office. Wouldn't be a bit surprised if that doesn't happen. I've said it to you guys many times already. If they ever take them out and base it on the issue of, well, in reality, what happened was that it was Russian collusion, and that's how they got in. I mean, they just don't give up this Russian collusion thing. But you know, guys, I'm telling you, I really feel like Trump knows full well what's going on. He's only playing a part. If you knew what I knew about his so-called spiritual advisors, maybe you would wake up. And I'm not saying many of you are awake, okay? When I say wait, you need to, let's talk about waking up. That's for those that are out there that are so bent on thinking that President Trump is a savior to the world because you have all these prophecies out here going on. You know how many of these people that are prophesying that are in these mainstream movements here that are all pumped up and promoted up? Jeez. Guys, some of the things that I know would just spin your head. Even when it comes to President Obama and his fake birth certificate, you would be shocked to know what really happened. It was a fake birth certificate, by the way. But the thing is, I know what really happened on that issue. Not at liberty to say. But I can tell you one thing. You'd be surprised that those that are able to block things from going to the Supreme Court end up becoming very well known later. Become very popular and wealthy. And what really staggers my imagination is that it's many times in the Christian circles. That's why I say, and I know for a fact There have been some churches that have been used to launder money, drug money. I'm just really troubled. I really thought we were a republic, a democracy, whatever you want to call it. In other words, I thought we had freedoms, we had liberty, and justice for all. But we really don't. That's what's troubling. I don't know what you guys think about all this, but it is troubling to me. It's troubling to me to realize that we have been duped. Now, I don't say that we don't have some good politicians out there. There probably are some really good politicians, but you probably find that the really good ones, they're always kept way down. They probably don't make it into office, and if they do make it into office, they never go very far. You know, same thing in Israel. There are some good politicians in Israel. They never make it very far. Never do. You know, unless there's a slip up, somebody dropped the ball somewhere and one got in. They don't want us to be able to get who we want. And I'll tell you another thing. I'll throw one thing in here for you guys. I would love to do a survey on this. I've done one privately. You will find the man that is normally going to get elected president, or woman, whichever the case would be if that were the issue, the one that's going to win, when you're dealing with major corporations and stuff that normally donate to both sides of the aisle, the candidate that's going to win will always get the much higher donation, and the one that will not win will get the lower donation. And I think it's almost knowledge by the candidates themselves. They know if they're supposed to win or not. That's just a personal opinion. We'll have to see. You know, and even if they take, if something happens to President Trump, when I say something happens as far as impeachment or something of that nature there, I really believe he knows exactly, I believe he knew before he ever became president what his purpose was. And it may be that he doesn't get impeached. It may be that they're able to bring about a revolution as a result of this to be able to disarm the nation, which is what I was told. Looking for an excuse to disarm this nation. They need and I was told right there from Obama's administration, the same man that worked under George Bush, not H.W., but the other Bush, they're looking for a reason to bring about a revolution so they can disarm this nation. And then Trump would become a dictator, declare martial law. They're bringing about a new world order. And guys, we're not paying attention. I think it was Ben Gurion that actually said the United States would become a welfare state. He's no prophet. He just knew what the plan was and what the objective was. This is the sad part. And yet we're still duped into believing something. You know, let me just share this one last thought with you. You want to believe in something? Believe in Jesus Christ. Believe in Yeshua HaMashiach. All right? And don't make a political football out of his name either. He knows what language you speak. On the day of Pentecost, they all heard every man in his own language. Remember, that's what they said. How understand we every man in our own, or how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? Are not these all Galileans? They were speaking there, stammering lips, but Peter spoke in his own tongue. And they heard, and I think I did a tally of it one time. I think it was 35 different languages that were present that day. So if you call him Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus, whichever tongue that it's in, I forget, my wife actually has another way of saying it from her country. We don't have to get caught up into that either. Put your focus in him. Now we do know the time comes, Zechariah says that, not Zechariah, but Zephaniah says that God will restore pure language and we will all call upon the name of the Lord. Okay, let that time come. It hasn't got here yet. Then that will be corrected. Then we'll know how to call upon one name for the Lord. But until then, he understands. Put your focus in him. Cast your vote for him, for heaven's sake. Then you're sure to win. I'm Steve Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Prepare for this weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will be in a whirlwind. Speaking to you on Patreon as well as here on Israeli News Live this weekend on Danun Institute. We'll do a Shabbat message this weekend as well. Can't say it's going to be on Friday evening or if it's going to be on Saturday. We'll see. We're coming up into the high holidays as well. The Jewish New Year, based on the way the Israeli government goes by it, now we would be saying Shana Tova. Have a Happy New Year, or literally the beginning, a good beginning here is what we're having. I still hold to Nisan 1 as being the true New Year because that's what God gave Moses. But it's okay. We still have, we have Yom Sukkot, we have Yom Kippur, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Day of Atonement, these holidays that we are moving into now, very important holidays, very important time of year for Israel, of repenting, etc. So I hope to be sharing some of those insights with you this weekend on Danun Institute. Maybe we might do our Shabbat live here on Israeli News Live as well. We'll wait and see how that turns out. Anyway, blessings to you all for tuning in tonight. God bless you, and we'll also be updating you in the morning on the serious breaking news that's going on out there. Erev Tov.